Okay, I wanted to pass along a little information, might help somebody out there. As you know, I'm doing a lot of printing with PETG, especially on these parts for the helping hand, the mounts that have a lot of stress put on them. They need to be as strong as possible. So I'm printing them with thick walls, a higher density infill, and also with PETG to give it extra strength. So that's what we're printing now, and I have a little clip here of what the layer should look like on each layer. When printing with PETG, you've got to get the temperatures right. With my King Rune printers, the temperature is 245 Celsius and 70 degrees on the bed, and that gives me a good smooth layer. Each layer should, on a solid layer, should be smooth to the touch. There shouldn't be any sharp, jagged edges. If you have that, then you start having problems, because filament will start accumulating on your nozzle, and I've run across it many times, and when it's not set up right, it just ends up being a big mess, and you usually lose your prints. Another thing too, on these little feet, little small critters, but I can print a lot of these, like 30 or 40 at a time. However, if anything happens to a single one of them, then you have a problem. And I had that problem the other day. One of the ones on the outer edge, the corner began to lift on it, and when it did, the head started hitting the top of it a little hard, and the part broke loose. So what I did, each time the printer came back around to print that part, since it wasn't there, it was depositing filament and starting to create a problem that would wipe out the rest of the parts. I let it go 2 passes, carefully pausing the printer and removing strings of filament, and after 2 layers, then I took what was remaining of the one that had broken loose, took my hot glue gun and hot glued that part back into place where it belonged. Then the next print cycle, there was enough material there that the filament, instead of stringing away, actually adhered to the top of that part and started continuing printing that part. Even though that part was no longer any good, it still allowed me to continue and finish the print job and save the other 39 parts that were good, that had about another 2 hours of printing to go. If you ever run across that, you can, and I even was prepared to take some other piece of scrap plastic that same diameter and glue it in there, so there'd be surface there at the same height as the other parts for the filament to lay down. And another thing I've run across is that there have been a few times, for some reason, maybe a power glitch or something, that I'll find one of my printers has just stopped at a certain point. Well, the first time this happened, I thought, well, the printer's shot, so I pulled the part off and reset the printer and everything. But the second time, what I did, I left everything as it was. I just powered down the printer, and when I powered it back up, it was in resume mode. So I hit resume, and it picked up and continued printing and finished printing the part. So that's something to keep in mind. You might want to try that if that happens to you. Just keeps from losing, a couple hours of print time and filament if you can salvage the part. So those are just a few things I thought I'd pass along, run across the last few days. The important thing is on the PETG, getting the temperature right. I was just down at the other print farm and printing PETG down there on the ANET ET4 Pro printers, and on one of the jobs I was trying to print, I was having a lot of trouble. I couldn't seem to, I kept working with the temperatures and everything, trying to get it right. And what I'll do a lot of times to try to get that temperature right with the PETG, I'll start out at 230 degrees, something like that, be printing a layer of a smaller part, and I'll feel that layer and watch it and look at it and feel it with my hand to feel if it's rough and if the filament's lifting and stuff. And then I'll gradually start increasing the temperature on the printer, each layer at a time. A lot of times I'll be able to see the layers start smoothing out, and the filament will start laying down better and giving me a more consistent surface. And when it starts doing that, then I feel like I'm zeroing in on the ideal temperature. So it's just a lot of trial and error. And like I said, it varies on different printers. I can't rely on temperature settings and stuff for this particular spool of filament, PETG, that's running on this King Rune. I can't go down and put it on my ANET and set the ANET at the same temperatures, because it won't be the same. And I think a lot of that has to do with the printer themselves, print head, the body, whether or not a lot of my printers, all of the ANETs down there, now I believe I have the silicone boots on the hot end to help retain heat, but the thermocouples can vary in accuracy, and they can go bad. And also the positioning of them, how they're positioned in the body, that heat body of the head. That block has a place where you insert that thermocouple, and some thermocouples may be a little better insulated than others and may give you a 3 or 4 or 5 degree temperature difference. I hate to say it, but a lot of times each printer can vary some, and sometimes if you're not getting good print out of one printer, you need to look at things like that. Also, another thing that I do like my ET4s, ANET ET4s, because they're manual bed leveling. And a lot of times when you're printing with PETG or PLA or whatever, there are different settings to, especially on glass. The height of the nozzle off the glass makes a lot of difference in adhesion and everything. That first layer that you lay down needs to be flattened out to a certain degree to get good adhesion. If your nozzle's just slightly too high, you're going to lay it down a bead, but it's going to be, I guess an example would be if you took a tube of toothpaste and you just ran a bead of toothpaste out on your counter and it dried, you could probably just pick it up and it'd come right off. But if you put that toothpaste down on your counter and then you squished it down onto the surface, then that toothpaste has a lot more surface to adhere to, and it's going to be a lot harder to get up. And it's the same way with the filament. So what I try to do is adjust printers, the heads and nozzle height, based on what I'm going to be printing. And I can change that easily with the ET4, the manual bed leveling printers. On the Pros, and it's the ET4X that's manual. But on the ET4s and ET4 Pros, they have automatic bed leveling. So they come down, and it is very difficult. It's very hard to get that sensor to sense exact height that you want your nozzle to be. So anyway, that's a little bit about that. I'll try to throw in a few more things here. Wanted to try to get a video out, but we've got a lot going on around here this week.